The laughter started before the bell even rang. Sharp, loud, mean. It echoed across the front steps of Jefferson Ridge Middle School, bouncing off brick walls in cold November air like stones being thrown for sport. "Is that a blanket or a coat?" a boy shouted. Another voice followed, crueler. "Looks like she robbed a thrift store in 1985. Then came the worst one. "Girl, did your grandma die in that thing?" 12-year-old Naomi Carter froze. Her hand tightened around the frayed sleeve of the coat she was wearing, her mother's old winter coat, 2 sizes too big, the buttons mismatched, the lining worn thin from years of careful use. She hadn't wanted to wear it, but the heat in their apartment had gone out again, and her mama had wrapped the coat around Naomi's shoulders that morning and said softly, "It's still warm, baby, and it's still good." Now it felt like every eye on the front steps was burning straight through it. Naomi lowered her head and tried to keep walking, but the laughter followed. A girl stepped directly into her path, white, blonde, perfectly pressed jacket with a brand name stitched proudly on the chest. "Well, I'll be," the girl said, wrinkling her nose. "Didn't know we had a costume contest today." Her friends laughed harder. Naomi felt her face burn. I just need to get to class," she said quietly, trying to step around them. The girl reached out and yanked the sleeve of the coat. The fabric pulled, the seam tore slightly. "Oh my God," the girl gasped dramatically. "It's literally falling apart." That's when someone snapped a picture. The sound of the phone camera was small, but it landed like a gunshot. Naomi's chest tightened. "Stop," she whispered. "Please." But the word please meant nothing to children who had never needed it. "Hey, Miss Carter," a boy called out, smirking. "You wearing that thing 'cause your family can't afford heat?" A few kids gasped. Others laughed even louder. Naomi felt something crack inside her. Not anger. Not yet. Shame. The kind that sinks deep and stays quiet. She hugged the coat tighter around herself, like it could protect her from words sharp enough to draw blood. "I said, move." A teacher's voice cut through the chaos. The group scattered instantly, laughter turning into innocent chatter as if nothing had happened. Naomi stood alone on the steps. Her hands were shaking. She looked down at the coat, her mama's coat, the one her mother had worn to work cleaning offices at night, the one that still smelled faintly of lavender soap and coffee, the one her mother had wrapped around Naomi when she was sick with the flu, whispering prayers into her hair. Naomi swallowed hard. "I shouldn't have worn it," she thought. "I should have just been cold." Inside the school, the whispers followed her down the hallway. Kids leaned toward each other. Phones buzzed. Screens glowed. By lunchtime, the photo had spread. Someone had added text, "When your mom's coat is your personality." Naomi sat alone at the edge of the cafeteria, untouched food in front of her. She kept her coat on, not because she was cold, but because taking it off felt like giving them permission to laugh even harder. Across the room, the girl who had pulled her sleeve was retelling the story, dramatic hand gestures and exaggerated faces. Everyone laughed. Naomi stared down at her tray, blinking fast. She didn't cry. She refused to give them that. But she made herself a promise, a quiet one that no one else heard. One day, they'll know my name for something else. That afternoon, Naomi walked home instead of taking the bus. She didn't want anyone else to see the coat. The wind cut through the thin lining, but she didn't slow down. When she reached their apartment, her mother was sitting at the small kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug of tea. "You okay, baby?" her mama asked gently. Naomi hesitated, then shook her head. Her mother stood immediately. "What happened?" Naomi held out the sleeve, the torn seam, the loose thread. Her mother's eyes softened, not with anger, but with understanding that hurt more.
They laughed, at the coat, at me. Her mother pulled her into a hug. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I know it's old." Naomi shook her head against her chest. "No," she said firmly, "it's not the coat." Her mother kissed her hair. "Listen to me," she said. "That coat has kept us warm through a lot, and so have you." Naomi looked up. "Promise me something," her mother said. "What?" "Promise me you won't let people who've never gone without decide your worth." Naomi nodded. That night, she carefully stitched the torn seam back together with a needle and thread, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Each stitch was small, precise, quiet, like her. She wore the coat again the next day, and the next. The laughter didn't stop, but neither did she. And years later, long after the whispers faded, long after the children grew up and forgot, that same school would stand silent for a very different reason. But that hadn't happened yet.
By the following Monday, the coat had a nickname. Naomi didn't hear it the first time. She felt it. A pause in conversation when she entered a room, the way heads tilted together, the sharp breath of laughter quickly swallowed. Then someone said it out loud. "Here comes patchwork." The word rippled through the hallway like a dropped plate shattering. Naomi stopped walking. For a brief second she considered turning around, pretending she forgot something, escaping to the bathroom until the bell rang. But the promise she'd made to herself and to her mother pulled her forward. She kept going. The lockers slammed louder as she passed, like punctuation marks to the cruelty. A boy mimicked sewing motions with his hands. Another girl pretended to shiver dramatically. "Careful," someone said loudly. "If you stand too close, it might fall apart." Naomi reached her locker and opened it with shaking hands. Her reflection stared back at her in the dull metal. Small, dark-skinned, eyes too serious for 12 years old, wrapped in a coat that carried more history than fabric. She closed the locker and turned. That's when she saw the flyer. It had been taped to the bulletin board overnight. A printed photo. Her photo. The one snapped on the steps. The coat hung heavy around her shoulders, her face frozen in shock. Across the top, written in thick black marker, "When your clothes come from memories, not stores." Underneath, laughing emojis had been drawn in red. Naomi's breath left her chest. She reached out and tore the paper down. Too late. Phones were already up. Clicks, whispers, snickers. A teacher passed by, frowned briefly, and said, "All right, let's keep moving," before continuing down the hall. No questions, no consequences. Naomi folded the paper carefully, like it was something fragile, and slid it into her backpack. She didn't know why. Maybe she needed proof later that she hadn't imagined any of it. In math class, she sat in the back row. Numbers blurred on the board as her mind replayed the laughter on a loop. She had always loved school, loved how answers made sense, how effort mattered. But today, none of that felt safe. A crumpled note landed on her desk. She stared at it, didn't open it. Another followed, then another. Finally, she unfolded one. "That it smells like poverty." Her throat tightened. She raised her hand. "Yes, Naomi?" the teacher asked, distracted. "Can I go to the nurse?" she asked softly. The teacher glanced at the clock. "Again? You were just there last week." Naomi nodded. "Fine," the teacher sighed. 5 minutes. Naomi grabbed her backpack and slipped out. The nurse's office was empty. She sat on the vinyl bed and stared at the wall until the bell rang. It was easier than facing them. At lunch, she tried sitting at a different table. A girl looked up and said, flatly, "Seats taken." They weren't. Naomi nodded and walked away. She ended up in the library, eating crackers from her bag. The librarian didn't ask questions. She rarely did. That afternoon, something worse happened. As Naomi waited at her locker, the girl from the steps, the one with the perfect jacket, approached. Her name was Lydia Monroe. Everyone knew it.
Her father was on the school board. "Hey," Lydia said casually, "you know people are talking, right?" Naomi said nothing. "You could just stop wearing it. I mean, you're kind of doing it to yourself." Naomi finally looked at her. "This coat belonged to my mom," she said quietly. Lydia blinked, then laughed. "So what? Get a new one." Naomi closed her locker slowly. "You wouldn't understand." Lydia's smile vanished. "Don't act like you're better than us," she snapped. "You're the one wearing charity." Naomi walked away. Behind her, Lydia muttered, "Freak." That night, Naomi didn't tell her mother about the flyer, or the notes, or the nickname. Her mother was tired, shoulders slumped, hands rough from scrubbing other people's messes. Instead, Naomi helped with dinner and homework and smiled when she was supposed to. In her room, Naomi pulled the folded flyer from her backpack and smoothed it on the bed. She stared at the photo, at herself, at the coat. She thought about not wearing it anymore, about leaving it in the closet, about being invisible. Then she remembered her mother's voice. "People who've never gone without don't get to decide your worth." The next morning, Naomi wore the coat again. But this time, she pinned the loose button with a small gold safety pin her mother used for sewing. It caught the light, just a little. At school, the whispers resumed. But something had changed. Naomi lifted her chin. Not much, just enough. In English class, the teacher assigned a personal essay. She said, "Write about something that shaped you, something meaningful." Groans filled the room. Naomi's pen hovered over the page. Then she began to write. She wrote about cold nights and warm coats, about hands that worked until they cracked, about love stitched into seams. She didn't use names, but she told the truth. When she finished, her hands were shaking. She turned it in anyway. 2 days later, the teacher asked her to stay after class. Naomi's stomach dropped. "Yes, ma'am," she said quietly. The teacher held her essay. "This," she said, tapping the paper, "is one of the most honest pieces I've read in years." Naomi blinked. "I'd like to submit it to the district writing showcase, with your permission." Naomi nodded slowly, unsure. That afternoon, as Naomi walked home in the coat everyone loved to hate, Naomi felt something unfamiliar settle in her chest. Not confidence, not yet, but resolve. They could laugh, they could point, they could try to shrink her, but she had something they didn't, a story, and she was finally learning how to tell it.
By winter, the cold wasn't just outside. It lived in the hallways now, in the way Naomi's name was said, stretched thin, sharp at the edges, in the way laughter followed her like a shadow she couldn't shake. The coat had become a symbol, not of warmth, of weakness. At least, that's how they treated it. Someone had started a countdown, every morning written in chalk on the blacktop near the bus loop. Day 43, still wearing it. The number changed daily. Teachers erased it. Students rewrote it. Naomi stopped looking, but she felt it. Every step, every stare. At home, her mother noticed the silence first. Naomi used to talk nonstop, about books, about ideas, about things she wanted to be someday. Now she answered questions with nods, shrugs. "I'm just tired," she said when asked. Her mother didn't press. Bills were piling up, overtime shifts were endless, survival left little space for interrogation. At school, the bullying evolved. It always does. It got quieter, smarter, meaner. Someone loosened the thread on Naomi's sleeve during gym. Another student accidentally spilled chocolate milk down the back of the coat in the cafeteria. "I'm so clumsy," the girl said, eyes bright with satisfaction. Naomi cleaned it in the bathroom sink, scrubbing until her fingers burned. The stain didn't come out. She wore it anyway. Then came the video. It was uploaded on a Friday afternoon. By Monday morning, everyone had seen it. A shaky clip filmed from behind lockers. Naomi bending down to pick up her books, the coat slipping open. A voice whispering loudly, "Zoom in."
Then laughter. Someone added music. Someone added captions. Vintage poverty. When your mom's clothes become your personality. By the time Naomi arrived at school, the video had been shared dozens of times. She found out when her locker wouldn't open. Someone had jammed gum into the lock. A small crowd gathered behind her. "Need help, patchwork?" a boy asked. Phones were already out. Naomi's hands trembled as she tried again. Nothing. She closed her eyes, counted to 3. Then something inside her cracked. She turned around. "Please," she said. Her voice was steady, too steady. "Just stop." The hallway went quiet for half a second. Then Lydia stepped forward. "You know, if you didn't want attention, you wouldn't dress like a museum exhibit." A few kids laughed. Naomi's heart pounded so loudly she could hear it in her ears. "My mother worked herself sick to give me that coat. She died in it." The laughter faltered, just a little. Lydia tilted her head. "That's not our problem." Something in Naomi snapped. Not loud, not explosive, but final. She bent down, picked up her backpack, and walked straight to the main office. The secretary looked surprised. "Yes?" "I want to report harassment," Naomi said. The words felt heavy, unfamiliar. The secretary sighed. "Have a seat." Naomi waited. 10 minutes, 20. Finally, the assistant principal called her in. He listened with polite detachment, took notes, nodded. "We'll look into it," he said. Naomi knew what that meant. Nothing. That afternoon, it happened. The breaking point. It was during the school assembly, the one everyone had been buzzing about for weeks. Parents were invited, district officials present, cameras set up for the school website. Naomi sat near the back. She had considered not wearing the coat. She wore it anyway. The principal took the stage, spoke about unity, about kindness, about building character. Naomi's fingers curled into the fabric of her sleeves. Then came the student recognition segment. "Outstanding achievement in creative writing," the principal announced. Naomi's head snapped up. Her name echoed through the auditorium. For a moment, she didn't move. The teacher turned, smiling encouragingly. The applause was scattered, uneven. As Naomi stood and walked down the aisle, whispers followed. She stepped onto the stage, took the certificate with shaking hands, and then someone laughed. Loudly. The sound cut through the room like a blade. Naomi froze. The principal hesitated. Then Lydia's voice rang out. "You gonna thank your mom's coat for inspiring you?" Laughter erupted. Parents shifted uncomfortably. Teachers glanced at each other. No one intervened. Naomi stood there, heart racing, face burning. She could walk off. She should walk off. Instead, she stepped back to the microphone. Her voice shook, but she didn't stop. "This essay," she said, "was about my mother." The room quieted. "She worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3. She gave up heat so I could eat. She wore that coat every winter until it fell apart." Naomi swallowed hard. She died before she could buy herself a new one. Silence. "I wear it because it reminds me who I come from, and because I refuse to be ashamed of love." A few parents began to clap, then more. Not thunderous, but real. Naomi handed the microphone back and walked off the stage. She didn't look at Lydia, didn't look at anyone. She went straight to the bathroom and locked herself in a stall. Her hands shook. Her breath came in sobs. She had said it. Out loud. She didn't know what would happen next. She only knew there was no going back. When Naomi got home that evening, her mother was sitting at the table. The phone lay beside her. Her eyes were red. "Why didn't you tell me?" her mother quietly asked. Naomi froze. The school called, her mother said. About the assembly, about the bullying. Naomi's shoulders slumped. I didn't want you to worry. Her mother stood and wrapped her in a fierce hug. They should have worried. The next morning, everything changed. Not all at once, but enough. The video disappeared. The chalk stopped appearing. Teachers watched more closely. Some students looked away when Naomi passed. Others, a few, smiled. Lydia didn't. She stared with something new in her eyes. Not victory, fear. Because for the first time, Naomi hadn't stayed silent.
And silence, once broken, has a way of echoing far beyond the moment. The Monday after the assembly arrived like a held breath. Naomi felt it the moment she stepped off the bus. The air was different, heavier, watchful. No chalk message on the pavement, no laughter echoing too loudly, no phones openly raised. But the silence wasn't peace, it was tension. She walked through the doors, gripping her backpack straps, the old coat wrapped tightly around her like armor. Her heart thudded as if it were warning her, something's coming. It didn't take long. My second period, the announcements crackled overhead. Will Naomi Johnson please report to the main office? Heads turned. Whispers bloomed. Naomi stood slowly, legs stiff, and walked down the hall she knew too well. The office door closed behind her with a soft, final click. Inside sat the principal, the assistant principal, the guidance counselor, and a woman Naomi didn't recognize. Middle-aged, gray blazer, district badge clipped to her lapel. Naomi, the principal said gently, have a seat. Her stomach twisted. She sat. The woman from the district spoke first. My name is Karen Whitfield. I oversee student welfare for the district. Naomi nodded. We've received multiple complaints, Whitfield continued, folding her hands, about harassment, about social media activity, and about what occurred during Friday's assembly. Naomi braced herself. I want you to know, the counselor said softly, you are not in trouble. Relief hit her so fast it almost made her dizzy, but it didn't last. We are, Whitfield continued, launching a formal investigation. The word investigation felt sharp. We'll be interviewing students, reviewing videos, examining staff responses. Naomi swallowed. And, the principal added, there may be consequences. Naomi lifted her chin. For who? She asked. The adults exchanged a look. That depends, Whitfield said carefully, on what we find. By lunch, the news had spread. An investigation, district officials, parents calling the school non-stop. The halls buzzed with speculation. Lydia sat unusually quiet in class, her eyes darting every time a teacher walked by. Her friends weren't laughing anymore. They were whispering. By afternoon, the first domino fell. The video that had gone viral, it wasn't just removed, it was traced. IP addresses, upload times, accounts. The vice principal pulled 3 students from class, Lydia among them. Parents were called. Meetings scheduled. Naomi watched from a distance as Lydia stormed out of the building, face red, jaw tight. For the first time, Naomi didn't feel afraid. She felt tired. That evening, Naomi's mother came home early. She never came home early. Her coat was still on, purse clutched tight. They suspended 2 students today, her mother said. Naomi looked up. For harassment, 1 week, mandatory counseling. Naomi nodded slowly. And the school is reviewing teacher conduct, including why no one stopped what happened on stage. Naomi's throat tightened. You didn't do anything wrong, her mother firmly said. Whatever happens next, remember that. But the consequences didn't stop at school. They spread.
A parent posted about the assembly on a local community page. Someone else shared it, then another. By Wednesday, a local news station called the school. By Friday, a camera crew stood outside the building. Naomi saw the van from the bus window, her chest clenched. She didn't want attention, she wanted normal. Instead, she got headlines. Student speaks out against bullying at local middle school. Vintage coat becomes symbol of harassment case. The coat. Always the coat. Teachers began treating her differently, kinder, careful, some too careful. "Are you okay?" they asked constantly. She wasn't sure how to answer anymore. Lydia returned the following week, quieter, alone. Her friends kept their distance. Rumors swirled. Her parents were furious, not at her, but at the school, at Naomi, at this whole situation. Lydia passed Naomi in the hallway one afternoon and hissed, "You ruined everything." Naomi stopped, turned. "I told the truth." Lydia's eyes flickered. Anger, shame, something else. "You didn't have to do it like that." Naomi held her gaze. "Yes," she said, "I did." The next consequence came from a place Naomi didn't expect, the school board meeting. Her mother asked if she wanted to attend. Naomi hesitated, then nodded. The room was packed. Parents, teachers, board members. Naomi sat beside her mother, hands folded tightly in her lap. They discussed policies, procedures, training. Then public comments opened. A woman stood. "My son was one of the students who laughed, and I failed to teach him empathy. For that, I apologize." Another parent spoke. "So many of us grew up poor, we learned to hide it. Maybe that's the problem." A teacher stood. "I should have intervened," she said, voice breaking. "I didn't, and I regret it." Naomi felt something shift inside her. Not victory, recognition. Then the superintendent spoke. "We will be implementing a district-wide anti-harassment initiative, mandatory staff training, student workshops, clear accountability." He paused. "And we would like Naomi Johnson to know her voice mattered." Naomi's face burned. Applause filled the room. She didn't smile. She cried. After the meeting, an elderly woman approached Naomi. She wore a wool coat, old, mended at the elbows. "My mother wore one just like yours. Thank you for reminding us that dignity doesn't come with a price tag." Naomi hugged her mother tightly that night. "I didn't want to cause trouble," Naomi whispered. Her mother kissed her forehead. "Trouble already existed," she said. "You just turned on the light." But consequences aren't always clean. Not everyone was grateful. Anonymous comments appeared online, calling Naomi dramatic, spoiled, playing the race card. Naomi read them once, then stopped. She focused on school, on writing, on breathing, on remembering her mother's words. "Hold your head high, even when the wind is strong." Winter deepened. The coat grew more worn. But Naomi wore it with a new weight, not shame, but history. She didn't know yet how far this moment would ripple, only that something irreversible had happened. She had stood up, and the world, for better or worse, had answered.
Time did not rush in to fix anything. It never does. After the meetings ended and the headlines faded, Naomi discovered that healing wasn't a moment, it was a season. Slow, uneven, quiet in ways that felt louder than shouting. Winter settled deeper over the town, gray skies pressing low against the school's brick walls. Snow dusted the sidewalks, and the old coat grew heavier with each passing day. Naomi wore it anyway. Not because she had to, because she chose to. The school felt different now, not kinder exactly, but cautious. Teachers paused longer before speaking. Administrators lingered in hallways. Posters about respect and inclusion appeared overnight, taped to walls that had once ignored cruelty. Students noticed.
Some rolled their eyes, others paid attention. Naomi kept her head down, focused on surviving each day without shrinking. That alone felt like work. Lydia avoided her completely now, not with cruelty, with fear, the kind that comes when power slips away and you don't know who you are without it. Naomi didn't take pleasure in it. She took distance. The guidance counselor asked if Naomi wanted to switch schools. Just until things cool down, she suggested gently. Naomi shook her head. No, she said. I didn't do anything wrong. The counselor smiled sadly. I know, she said. Sometimes that's the hardest part. At home, life stayed hard in familiar ways. Bills still came. Her mother still worked double shifts. The fridge still hummed too loud at night. But something subtle had changed. Her mother stood taller. Neighbors nodded differently. And sometimes, not often, but enough, someone would stop Naomi on the street. You're the girl from the school, they'd say. You were brave. Naomi never knew how to respond. Brave didn't feel like the right word. Tired felt closer. Spring arrived quietly. The snow melted, revealing chalk stains and cracks in the pavement. The coat moved from necessity to habit. Naomi tried leaving at home once. She lasted an hour. Not because she needed warmth, because without it, she felt unfinished. In English class, they were assigned a personal narrative. Write about a moment that changed you, the teacher said. Naomi stared at the blank page for a long time. Then she wrote. She wrote about her grandmother's hands sewing patches by lamplight, about her mother standing in silence after a long shift, about the coat, about the sound of laughter turning sharp, about standing alone on a stage. When she finished, her hand cramped and her chest ached. She didn't read it aloud, but her teacher asked to keep it. A week later, Naomi was called to the office again. Her stomach clenched, old reflex. This time, the principal smiled. Your essay, he said, holding a copy. We'd like to submit it to the district writing showcase. Naomi blinked. I didn't write it for that. I know, he said. That's why it matters. The showcase came and went. Naomi's name appeared on a flyer, then on a website, then in a small local paper. Her words traveled farther than she ever had. The coat became something else in the telling. Not a joke, not a weakness, a symbol. People started asking Naomi about it. She answered honestly. It belonged to my grandmother, she'd say. It kept us warm. Summer came. The school year ended. Naomi thought the story would end too. It didn't. In August, a letter arrived. Cream-colored envelope, school seal. Naomi opened it slowly. Inside was an invitation. The school district was creating a new annual program focused on student voices, essays, speeches, art. They wanted Naomi to be part of the advisory panel. She reread the letter 3 times. I'm just a kid, she said to her mother. Her mother smiled. So was I, and I still changed things. Naomi accepted. Middle school gave way to high school. The building was bigger, the halls louder, but something followed her. Respect. Not universal, not perfect, but real. Teachers knew her name. Students knew her story. Some admired her. Some resented her. She learned quickly that being seen didn't mean being safe, but it did mean being heard. Naomi joined the debate club, then the writing club, then student council, not because she wanted power, because she wanted a seat where decisions happened. She wore the coat less now, but she never got rid of it. It hung in her closet, smelling faintly of winter and laundry soap and memory. Her mother's hair began to gray. Her hands grew more tired. Naomi noticed. She started helping more. Cooking, tutoring Emma and Diego, working weekends at the library. Life didn't get easier. Naomi got stronger. One afternoon, her English teacher pulled her aside. Have you thought about college? She asked. Naomi laughed softly. Every day, she said, and every day I remember how much it costs. The teacher nodded. There are scholarships, and stories like yours, they matter. Naomi tucked that away. Time passed. Years stacked quietly on top of each other. And one day, Naomi returned to her old middle school, not as a student, but as a guest. The building looked smaller now. The stage where she once stood trembling had been repainted. A banner hung above it. Annual Community Honors Assembly. She stood backstage, heart pounding. A teacher handed her a microphone. "Whenever you're ready." She stepped out. The room fell silent. Students watched. Parents leaned forward. Teachers folded their hands. Naomi scanned the faces. Some familiar, some new. She spotted Lydia in the back. Older, quieter, watching. Naomi took a breath. "I used to think wearing my grandmother's coat made me small, but it taught me something instead." She paused. "It taught me that dignity doesn't come from what we wear. It comes from what we refuse to take off." Applause rose slowly, then fully.
Naomi didn't smile. She stood steady. The road forward had been long. It was still unfolding, but she finally understood something her grandmother had known all along. Some things don't keep you warm. They keep you standing. The first thing Naomi noticed when she stepped back into Lincoln Middle School was the smell. Floor cleaner and pencil shavings, old books and fresh paint, the kind of scent that lodged itself in your memory without asking permission. She paused just inside the double doors, her hand resting on the cool metal handle, letting the noise wash over her. Lockers slamming, laughter bouncing off tile, the sharp whistle of a gym coach down the hall. For a moment, she wasn't a guest speaker. She was 12 again. Small, invisible, wearing a coat that made her a target. "Ms. Carter?" Naomi turned. A young staff member smiled nervously, clutching a clipboard. "They're ready for you in the auditorium." Naomi nodded, her throat tightening. "Thank you." As she walked down the hallway, eyes followed her, some curious, some respectful, a few skeptical. Kids whispered, not cruelly, but with the energy of a name they'd heard before. "That's her, the coat girl. She spoke at the district thing." Naomi kept her pace steady. She had learned how to walk through attention without letting it swallow her. The auditorium doors loomed ahead, taller than she remembered. Back then, they had felt like gates to judgment. Now, they were just doors. Still heavy, still symbolic. Inside, the seats were filled. Students in hoodies and sneakers, teachers along the walls, parents scattered through the back rows. Naomi stood behind the curtain, microphone clipped to her collar, heart beating too fast. "You okay?" asked Mr. Halverson, her old English teacher, now gray at the temples. She smiled faintly. "I think so." He nodded. "You don't have to be perfect," he said. "Just honest." The curtain opened. Light flooded the stage, and for a split second, Naomi saw it all again. The whispers, the laughter, the heat in her cheeks, the way the coat had felt heavier than its fabric. She took a breath. "Good morning," she said. Her voice echoed. "I used to sit right there," she added, pointing to the third row, left side. "I remember, because that's where I learned how loud silence can be." A ripple moved through the audience. Naomi spoke slowly, deliberately. She didn't tell the story the way it had been told online. She didn't dramatize it. She told the truth. About being laughed at. About teachers who didn't hear. About going home and wondering if disappearing would be easier than staying. She talked about her grandmother, not as a symbol, but as a woman who hummed while sewing and believed dignity was stitched, not purchased. And then she said something unexpected. "I don't hate this school," Naomi said. "I never did. I hated what we let happen inside it." The room was silent. Because cruelty doesn't come from buildings. It comes from comfort, from people deciding it's easier to laugh than to listen. She paused. "And courage," she said, "isn't loud. It's the quiet choice to stand anyway." When she finished,
There was applause. Not thunderous, not performative, but real. As she stepped off stage, Naomi's hands trembled. Mr. Halverson squeezed her shoulder. "You did good," he said softly. Backstage, a woman waited. Principal Harris. Older now, slower. Her smile was careful. "Naomi," she said, "thank you for coming back." Naomi nodded. "Thank you for inviting me." The principal hesitated. "I want to say, I'm sorry. For what I didn't see, for what I didn't stop." Naomi studied her face. She didn't rush forgiveness. "I believe you, but apologies only matter if they change something." Principal Harris nodded. "They have," she said. "We've changed our policies, training, reporting. We're trying to do better." Naomi exhaled. "Good," she said. "Kids deserve that." As Naomi walked through the hallway afterwards, something unexpected happened. A girl stepped out of a classroom, skinny, nervous, wearing a threadbare hoodie 2 sizes too big. "Excuse me," she said softly. Naomi stopped. "Yes?" The girl swallowed. "I just wanted to say, thank you. People make fun of my shoes." Naomi's chest tightened. And I don't hide them anymore. Because of you." Naomi smiled, small but genuine. "I'm glad," she said. "But remember, you were strong before me." The girl nodded, eyes bright. "I know. Now." Later that afternoon, Naomi sat alone on the auditorium stage. The seats were empty now. Sunlight streamed through high windows, dust floating like quiet thoughts. She reached into her bag, pulled out the coat. She hadn't planned to bring it, but she had. She ran her fingers along the seams, the familiar weight settling into her lap. Footsteps echoed. She looked up. Lydia stood at the edge of the stage, older, quieter, her confidence stripped of its cruelty. "Hi," Lydia said. Naomi's body tensed, reflexive, uninvited. "Hi," she replied. Lydia swallowed. "I wasn't sure you'd want to see me." Naomi didn't answer right away. "What do you want?" she asked. Lydia nodded. "I deserved that." She stepped closer. "I was awful to you, and I knew it. I just didn't think it mattered." Naomi's gaze stayed steady. "And now?" "Now I know it did. It still does." Silence stretched. Naomi stood. "I don't need an apology to heal, but I accept it because you seem to mean it." Lydia's shoulders sagged in relief. "I do," she whispered. Naomi hesitated. "Just remember this. The world doesn't need fewer coats. It needs fewer people who think laughter is harmless." Lydia nodded. "I won't forget." When Naomi left the school that day, she didn't look back. She didn't need to. The return wasn't about closure. It was about proof. Proof that pain could travel forward and still become purpose. Proof that dignity could outgrow ridicule. And proof that sometimes the place that broke you becomes the place that finally learns. Outside, the air was warm. Spring again. Naomi slipped the coat over her arm, not to wear, but to carry. Some things weren't meant to be left behind. They were meant to be brought home.
The letter arrived on a Tuesday. Naomi almost threw it away. It sat among grocery flyers and bank notices, the envelope thicker than usual, cream-colored with an embossed seal she didn't recognize at first. Only when she saw the return address did her breath catch: Lincoln Unified School District. She stared at it for a long moment, the way you look at a door you're not sure you want to open. Some memories didn't knock, they barged in. She carried the envelope to the kitchen table, set it down carefully, and made tea she forgot to drink. When she finally opened it, her hands were steady, but her chest wasn't. "Dear Miss Naomi Carter, The Board of Education formally invites you to attend a special ceremony honoring distinguished alumni whose lives and work have made a lasting impact on our community. Naomi stopped reading. Distinguished. Honoring. The words felt unreal, like they belonged to someone else's story. She finished the letter slowly. They wanted to dedicate a scholarship in her grandmother's name. They wanted Naomi present. They wanted her on stage. They wanted to honor her. She laughed once, short, disbelieving. The same school that once watched her be humiliated over a coat now wanted her framed in gold letters. Naomi folded the letter and sat back. This wasn't vindication. This was something heavier. That evening, she called her Aunt Laverne. "They want to name a scholarship after Mama," Naomi said. There was silence on the line. Then a sharp inhale. "Oh," Laverne whispered, "your grandmother would have cried." Naomi smiled, eyes burning. She hated attention. "Yes," Laverne said softly, "but she loved justice." The weeks leading up to the ceremony stirred things Naomi hadn't expected. Old classmates reached out, some with apologies, some with memories that didn't include her at all, some with excuses that sounded like healing but weren't. She answered only a few. Healing didn't require a full inbox. The day before the ceremony, Naomi visited her grandmother's grave. She brought the coat, laid it gently across the stone. "They finally noticed," Naomi said aloud. "Not the coat, the care." The wind moved through the trees like a sigh. "I wish you were here," she added, "but I think you already knew how this would end." The morning of the ceremony, the school buzzed like a hive. Local news vans lined the street. Alumni mingled. Parents pointed at Naomi when she arrived, dressed simply in a navy dress and low heels. She wore no jewelry, no armor, just herself. Inside the gymnasium, banners hung from the rafters. One caught her eye. The Rosa Carter Scholarship for Resilience in Community Service. Naomi swallowed hard. Front row seats were reserved. Teachers she remembered, some kinder than others, sat stiffly, aware of their place in this moment. Principal Harris took the podium. "We gather today not just to honor success, but to acknowledge growth, ours." The words were careful, earnest. When Naomi's name was called, the applause was loud, louder than it had ever been. She walked to the stage slowly, aware of every step, every echo. The plaque was heavy in her hands, bronze, permanent. She turned to face the crowd, and then something unexpected happened. From the back of the gym, a small group stood. Students, current ones. They held handmade signs. "Kindness is power. We see you. Thank you, Naomi." Her throat closed. Naomi hadn't prepared a speech. She'd written one, but left it folded in her purse. She stepped to the microphone. "I didn't think I'd ever come back here. Not like this." A few people chuckled, nervously. "When I was a student, I learned early that silence can hurt just as much as words, and for a long time I thought the lesson was to endure." She paused. "But I was wrong." The room was still. The lesson wasn't endurance, it was transformation. She lifted the coat slightly, where it rested folded on the chair behind her. "This coat didn't make me strong. Love did. Care did. A woman who taught me that dignity doesn't come from fitting in, it comes from standing tall even when you're alone." She looked directly at the students. "If you remember anything today, remember this. What you laugh at today may be what changes the world tomorrow." Applause thundered. Not polite, not restrained, real. After the ceremony, people approached her cautiously. Some cried, some thanked her, some just nodded, eyes full. Then Naomi noticed someone hovering near the edge, a woman in her late 60s, gray hair pulled back, a familiar posture. It took a moment, then Naomi recognized her. Mrs. Bennett, the teacher who'd once looked away. The woman stepped forward, hands shaking. "I don't expect forgiveness, but I needed to say, I was wrong."
Naomi studied her. Time had softened her face. "I know," Naomi said quietly. "That's why this matters." Mrs. Bennet nodded, tears slipping free. As the gym emptied, Naomi sat alone again, the plaque beside her. She didn't feel triumphant. She felt complete. Not because the past was captured and corrected, but because it was finally acknowledged. Outside, the sun dipped low, bathing the school in amber light. Naomi walked to her car slowly. The coat rested across her arm. Tomorrow, she would donate it to the school's new display, part of a permanent exhibit on student voices in resilience. But tonight, it was still hers. As she drove away, she passed a group of kids laughing. Not cruelly, just living. She hoped they'd remember, because stories like hers weren't meant to end in applause. They were meant to begin conversations. And somewhere in a small classroom, a child would wear something old and stand a little taller because of it.
The school emptied slowly after the ceremony, but the impact of that day didn't fade when the lights went off. For Naomi Carter, the reckoning wasn't the plaque, the applause, or even the scholarship bearing her grandmother's name. It was what came after, the quiet ripples she never expected. The following Monday, Naomi returned to her life in Chicago, back to early mornings, lesson plans, community meetings, and grant proposals. Back to her nonprofit office, where the walls were lined with photos of students she'd helped over the years, kids who reminded her, in different ways, of herself. But something had shifted. Emails flooded in. Parents from Lincoln Unified wrote about their children. Kids who'd come home talking about the coat story, about kindness, about standing up for classmates being mocked. Teachers asked if Naomi would speak at other schools. Students reached out, some timidly, some desperately, sharing their own stories of being laughed at for shoes, accents, hand-me-downs, or skin. One message stood out. It was short. M.S. Carter. I wore my grandma's jacket to school last week. I almost didn't, but I did. And when someone laughed, I remembered what you said. I didn't cry. I didn't hide. Thank you. L.M., 7th grade. Naomi stared at the screen for a long time. Then she printed it and pinned it to her corkboard. The Rosa Carter Scholarship launched that fall. Applications poured in, not just from top students, but from quiet ones, kids who volunteered, kids who took care of siblings, kids who showed up every day despite circumstances no one saw. The first recipient was a shy black girl named Tiana Brooks. She wore a thrift store blazer to the award ceremony, sleeves slightly too long, shoulders padded from another decade. Naomi noticed it immediately. So did the room. But when Tiana stood to speak, her voice didn't shake. I used to hate this jacket, Tiana said, smiling nervously. It was my mom's. She wore it when she worked 2 jobs. Kids teased me for it. She paused, then looked at Naomi. Now, I know it means something. The audience rose in applause. Naomi wiped her eyes. That night, she dreamed of her grandmother for years for the first time. Rosa stood in the kitchen of their old house, stirring a pot, humming softly. You see, Rosa said without turning around, it was never just a coat. Naomi woke with tears on her cheeks, but peace in her chest. Back at Lincoln High, the changes became visible. A new hallway display appeared near the main entrance, Stories of Strength. The coat hung behind glass, a small plaque beneath it explaining its history, not as an object of pity, but of perseverance. Bullying reports dropped. Teachers attended new training sessions on bias and intervention. Students started a kindness committee. It wasn't perfect, but it was better. One afternoon, months later, Naomi returned quietly to the school. No cameras, no ceremony. She walked the halls alone. A group of students passed her, laughing. One girl wore scuffed boots and an oversized sweater. Another had braids tied with mismatched ribbons. No one pointed, no one sneered. In the library, Naomi found Mrs. Bennet again, shelving books. The older woman looked up and smiled, a real one this time. You changed this place, Mrs. Bennet said.
Naomi shook her head. No, she replied gently. You all did. I just reminded you. Before leaving, Naomi stopped at the display case. She rested her hand against the glass, right over the coat. I hope you're proud, she whispered. Outside, the school bell rang, loud, familiar, full of possibility. Years later, Naomi would be invited back again, not as an alumna, but as a keynote speaker for a national education conference hosted at the same school. By then, the story of the coat was taught in orientation, not as a tragedy, but as a lesson. And somewhere in the crowd that day sat a little black girl wearing her mother's old jacket, feet dangling from the chair, eyes shining as she listened. She didn't yet know all the reasons she felt brave, but she would. Because stories don't just end, they echo. And sometimes what begins as laughter becomes legacy. And sometimes a coat meant to keep a child warm becomes something far greater, a shield, a voice, and a promise that dignity will always outlast cruelty.